And we are back with the latest episode of the Goosed Podcast. This time we were talking about one of the hottest tech topics in the country right now, e-scooters. So what is the crack? Why is the law so sketchy with these modes of transport? And what does the green wave mean for the future of e-scooters? Martin, our resident scooter commuter, has decided to join us on this podcast to talk about everything electronic. But before we get into that, a quick word from our sponsors. Get Funky Design is a branding and graphic design studio based in Portlaoise that help businesses express themselves through creative brand identities, logos and graphic design. We believe wholeheartedly in the power of developing a strong brand for businesses as well as the importance of uncovering communication that makes you great. If you want to give them a shout today, they'll give you a free brand audit. All you have to do is check us out on Goosed.ie/podcast. Click the link there and the lads will give you a free brand audit on us. So, without further ado, let's get into it. See you in a while. And we are back. Woo! Dane, Martin.
Alright,
Johnny,
boy.
how are you, man? Mart?
What's crack, Dino? You well?
Good, man.
So we are going to talk about the hottest tech topic in the country, e-scooters.
Yes, boy.
Martin, as our resident scooter commuter, are you going to take the wheel on this one? Hey.
Oh, God.
Early
That's
pun.
some top punnage. Yes, I will. I will gladly take the wheel on this one. So, yeah, I guess e-scooters kind of exploded there the last couple of months in Ireland. Now, the one thing I suppose is important to point out is that they've been here an awful lot longer than just a couple of months. Like, I know scooters in general, electric scooters, probably been around for about 5 years. I've heard some lads saying that's how long they've had them. Yeah, that long.
Oh, Jesus.
But I guess it's the Xiaomi M365, the Segway 9bots. These have made it really, really popular. They're really affordable because scooters have gone from like 5 years ago being £2,000 to now being four or 500 quid, which is it's just breaking down that barrier for people. So yeah, they're massively popular. And like if you live in Dublin City, it's you quickly understand why. Like I love absolutely nothing more than when I'm on the way home and I'm skipping by a whole heap of cars. It's a great feeling to get home so much quicker. Like now to be fair, there was a breakdown done recently. There's a website called eride.ie. And
Oh, yeah, you were showing me that before.
yeah, so they did a kind of a survey of their community, and they got I think it was about 80 or 90 people answered. And they said that there's about, I think it was 20, I'm going to try and pull it up, but there's about 29% of people who actually I'll see if I can get it up and I'll come back onto that actual stat. But there was a good percentage of people that have transitioned from driving using motorbikes, like fairly hefty modes of transport, and they've moved on to using electric scooters now instead, because there was some governmental talk there where they thought that most people were moving from using public transport onto scooters, and so it wasn't doing much for traffic. So I have it here. Yeah, 67% of people have moved from driving a car or motorbike that are using scooters. They used to use cars or motorbikes. So 67%. I'm in the 7%.
So it's a big shift.
Yeah, so I'm in the 7% of people that used to walk. So I'm not doing anything for congestion. If anything, I am contributing a little bit more. But there's one day I pulled up at a red light and there was a lad in a big flash BMW beside me, and like one of these big massive black exec cars. And like I looked at it, I'd say I was surrounded by about 19 people on either bikes or scooters. And we were taking up in or around the same space that one car was taking up. And then you see that, you immediately understand what the congestion problem is in Dublin. So I've been using
But
mine.
at the same stage, haven't scooters replace BMWs as the mode of transport for the typical wanker?
Yeah, actually, yeah. I was just reading something from minutes ago that we were taking over from Audi, actually, which is. But yeah, so look, I've been using mine now since the start of the year. I got mine in January, so coming up to 6 months on it now, actually. I've clocked up.
And how far is your commute to work, Mert? And like, how long would it take you to get in the scooter?
Yeah, so normally it took me about 40 minutes to walk to the office. And now on a scooter it's about 10 minutes. Um,
Wow.
so it's like for me, it's not about like I didn't like walking to work or anything like that. It's an hour back in my day pretty much that I didn't have before. So for me, that's the value. It's not that I want to skip out on my walk because what I want to try and do is use that time in the gym or go for a run or something and get more than a walk to
Yeah.
work. So for me,
Yeah.
that's the
No.
massive benefit.
Yeah, that makes sense because one of the things I was thinking about getting them is that I walk a lot now, and if I was to get one of these, I would be missing out on exercise. But like you said there, for the time that you're saving, you can go to the gym, so you're not really missing out on exercise.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about what you do with your time. So like it's about getting that time back into your day. So I think I've clocked I think the guts of about 500 kilometers on mine already. Um, and yeah, like there's been some learnings I've had from it. Like it's hard to do turn signals because you've got the throttle control on your right hand, and so if you want to
Mm-hmm.
keep going, you can't really do a right hand signal. So I've got a cover for my backpack that has a little light on it that I can control left and right indicators with. Yeah, I'm that level of nerd.
That is
Um,
amazing. So it's like an indicator backpack.
yeah, exactly. So that's the kind of nerd I am. But like that
That is
overcomes
peak
that
nerd.
problem. But like last week in the Dáil, Noel Rock, Deputy Noel Rock was talking to the minister about this because to be fair, Noel Rock brought this up about 18 months ago that scooters were going to explode in Dublin. So there's about 2,000 of these things on the road now. Like it's not a small number of them by any means, but he brought it up like that there's safety concerns. I'd agree that indication thing that, or like hand signals, that it's a safety concern that needs to be looked at. But he also
Mm-hmm.
brought up the fact that they don't have suspension, and like that kind of I'd agree. Yeah, it can be a bit of a shaky ride. Like, but then I looked at Dublin bikes. Dublin bike doesn't have suspension. It's I've got pneumatic tires
And
on it,
judging
so
by half the buses I've been on in Dublin, they don't have suspension either.
yeah, exactly. Like so, I think there is a certain element of scooters are new and scooters are different. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of people in power are a little bit scared of them and they don't really know what to do and they're defaulting to smear campaigns and negativity and kind of trying to poke holes in it and find problems. Like over in the UK at the minute,
Mm-hmm.
they're clamping down on them big time. They're giving out penalty points and fines. Like I know there's a guy in Ireland right now who is in the court system. He got pulled over for having an electric scooter, and he's actually currently going through the courts. He's going to be facing 5 penalty points and potentially losing his license for driving uninsured on an MPV, which is just absolutely ludicrous when you think about the fact this is an electric scooter.
Okay, so actually, what we're getting at is there's a lot of stuff going on with the scooters at the moment. So you mentioned the word MPV. So if we take it all the way back to the start and say, how did this problem start? Why are the guards picking up scooters, and what the hell is an MPV?
Right, so yeah, MPV is but 3 letters that I've taken extreme interest in for the last 6 months. So my electric scooter, so some quick specs on it. So it does about 25 kilometers an hour. It's supposed to have a range of about 30 kilometers. And realistically, it has about 20 kilometers. Um, and one of the big things on it, it has all the normal stuff like you have a brake just like you would on a bike. It's got a light on it just like you would on a bike, a backlight, the whole lot, all that usual stuff is there. But one of the big features on it is that if you stand on this scooter and if you press the throttle, nothing happens. You don't move, you don't budge, you can't go anywhere. So you can't take a journey across Dublin completely mechanically assisted. Like there's just no way to do it, or mechanically powered. There's no way to do it, because you have to kick off the scooter and actually get up to a certain speed. I think it's 5 miles per hour, whatever that translates into kilometers, and then you put
Mm-hmm.
the throttle down, and then the motor kicks in. So now I'll be the first to admit this is a bit of a grey area. It's a loophole where mechanically propelled vehicle by law, um, there is a guideline sent out by the RSA which states that if it can be powered by electric power alone, it's an MPV. And actually kind of suggested that if you have to scoot at all, that's not an MPV anymore. So this was the Road Safety Authority that said this, and this led to massive confusion. And this is also why Gardaí started seizing the things. But the other thing was the RSA updated their FAQs recently to say even if you have to scoot to start. Because they were obviously starting to see, oh shit, there's a loophole here that these scooters are falling through. So they kind of plugged it quite quickly and quite unpleasantly.
Poorly.
Just this, yeah, like this is a horrible solution to the problem. Just change the document and leave it out there, and no official communication. And they were carrying out this study that hasn't seen the light of day yet, and it was just it all feels very cloak and dagger about this mode of transport that's green, it's energy efficient. Like,
But haven't they set precedent already with this fella down in Kerry not long ago? He was riding, was it a bike, an electric bike of some sort?
oh, the
And
guy
he
in
was done
Kilkenny,
for
yeah,
being twisted.
yeah,
And essentially he got off because it was assisted rather than motor propelled, because he had to pedal it up to 15 kilometers an hour before the engine took over or whatever.
Yeah, now, first of all, I don't condone people drink driving in any way, shape, or form, especially not on a scooter, because you get milled off it pretty quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, the legal precedent is sound. So he got off because it was an assisted vehicle, and like, if I was to be stopped with a Gardaí, I'd just tell them, take this scooter up any kind of a hill, and you'll quickly tell it's not mechanically propelled, it's assisted. Like, there's hills where I'm doing most of the work. Now I know I'm a heavier gentleman, but still, like, these things, they're not big V8 beasts. Like, they're not powerful. Like, I get overtaken by as many bikes as I overtake. Like, there's cyclists, like, they're talking about, even if they do get legalized, that they might have speed limits of 25 kilometers an hour. And, like, to be honest, I'm fine with that. That's my speed limit anyway. But, like, I'm doing 25 kilometers an hour on a scooter, and bikes are ripping past me. So it's just, there's this weird thought about these things because they're new that they have to be bad. Like, a cyclist pulled up beside me one day. It's a really funny story where he's like, God, that joke now, I hear they're going to outlaw them. And it's like, how fast can you go? And I was like, oh, about 25 kilometers an hour. And he was like, oh my God, I can't believe you can go that fast. And yeah, like, one snuck up behind me there recently. They're very quiet. And I was like, well, like, you can probably go faster than that. Your bike isn't exactly loud. And before I could finish my sentence, he broke the reds and he was gone. He just went flying up the road. And I was like, it's just these things are just being demonized for no really good reason. And like Minister Ross is constantly coming out by saying, oh, it's what we're looking for is safety, safety, safety. And it's like, to be honest, it's not. You're just avoiding something new and trying to just kind of put it under the carpet without talking about it.
Seems as you mentioned Mr. Ross. I found it very interesting recently because he was saying about this RSA report that he's commissioned to see what's happening with e-scooters in other countries and how they've affected city centres and blah blah blah. He was saying that they don't reduce congestion and that all they're doing is adding another layer of vehicles onto the road and blah blah blah. Is that just nonsense, or is there any basis to that?
Yeah, like, what's worrying about this is that he was, and this is where I'm kind of getting to my point on it feels like a smear campaign, that he came out and said, oh, the evidence he's seen is that they actually add to congestion rather than take away from it. And that's why fair play to Gene over at the eride.ie, because he's managing this massive community of people who actually have various different e-rides. So it's not all scooters, there's electric unicycles.
You were saying before, it's about 300 people or something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about 200, over 200 people in it. So he just surveyed them and said, look, what were you doing before you had an e-ride? And there was, like I said, what was it? There's 67% used to either use a motorbike or similar. Like 21% were public transport, so bus, Lewis, or Dart. 7%, like myself, were walking, and then 4% were on bikes. Because if you're on a bike, a scooter doesn't make sense. Like, it's not a natural thing to transition to. Now, for the people who are using public transport, like, yeah, fair enough. Of course you're going to move. Like, just there yesterday, Houston Station in Dublin got completely shut down because of a signalling error. Like, there's days where cars crash on the Lewis lines and the Lewis is shut down. Like, public transport isn't reliable. And the other thing about public transport is, I've been in Dublin and waiting on a bus where the bus just drives straight past you because it's full. Like, by having these, you're taking stress away from the roads, congestion away from the roads, you're taking stress off public transport, They're incredibly green and energy efficient. Like the scooter I have, it costs, if it went to 0% every single day, which it doesn't, I only get it down to about 60. But if it was at 0% every day, it would cost me 8 cents to get it back up to 100% charge. And like that's astronomical save. Like that's so cheap. Like the mileage, I'm not going to do the maths on it because I'm too slow, but it's incredible. If you compare that to cars, like I'd say one day of driving a car would keep me going for probably a year or two on an electric scooter.
Probably. Actually, Dean, question for you on the scooter thing, because obviously Limerick is a very different city in terms of its infrastructure to Dublin. If we had scooters here, would you use one, and what kind of range would you be willing to travel on it?
Being honest, I've seen one of these scooters in Limerick. That was about 4 or 5 months ago. I haven't seen them at all other than that. But if the popularity went up in them, I would definitely use them. Like obviously, like I can get a bus from. I live in town now. I can get a bus from town to Crescent for, I don't know, $2.50 or something like that. I could drive if I want to, but it easily takes me around 20 minutes from get to town to Crescent, depending on traffic and that. But if I had the option of using an e-scooter, yeah, I'd definitely use one, 100%. And like I'm even like looking at something here, that's up on the journal. Apparently, Ross came out and said, if a mode of transport is what is it now? If it's mechanically propelled, the user needs to have insurance, road tax, and a driver's license. Like, in what world would you need a driver's license to have to spin around in one of these scooters? Like, you probably, Mert, you would probably know better than me because you use it. You arguably have more control of an e-scooter than you would have a bike, would you? Because you're closer to the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you've hit the nail on the head there. Just yesterday, and last week. Now, yesterday was kind of more my fault because I was trying to negotiate a narrow gap between a pedestrian and a car. But the week before, there was a pedestrian who he heard a car beep the horn at the far end of the road, and he had headphones in and turned as he was crossing the road, so he didn't see me at all. And I basically, right in front of him, hit the brakes. Now, my brakes alone, like on a bike, you've got a stopping distance where you do need a couple of meters to stop. And unfortunately, the brakes weren't going to do it. But because I'm on a scooter, all I had to do was step off. So I just kind of jumped off and I stopped dead still. Whereas like on a bike, you would have fallen off or you wouldn't have had the mental kind of, the instinct to jump off or whatever, because it just doesn't work like that. Whereas on a scooter, you're
moving faster. Your
2 feet are beside the ground. To jump off a scooter is really easy. So I can come to a dead stop much quicker than I could if I was on a bike. So yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there. Like in a lot of ways, scooters are actually safer in terms of stopping distances and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would argue. I mean, like even if a car is coming from your left or right and you see it at the last minute, on a bike, you might be able to pull your brakes.
No, you're getting smushed.
Arguably, yeah, you're getting smashed and you're going to end up on the bonnet, if not in the windscreen. Whereas at least with a scooter, if you are going fast enough that you can't stop the scooter, you can still jump off.
Yeah.
And cause minimal damage to the car. A scratch, probably. These scooters aren't going to cause much damage to the bumper or bonnet of a car, like, you know.
Yeah, and I think this is where...
This bit... Go on, Mert.
This is where I think it gets interesting as well. Like, 'cause you're thinking about, like, Shane Ross coming out talking about, we want to make sure it's safe for scooter users, for drivers, for cyclists. What he's really worried about here is a scooter being involved in a car crash and then who gets blamed and whose insurance pays for it. Like, and like that's not the like I've been on the phone. Like, there's a video I did for ourselves there on Goosed that where I actually called Chill Insurance and was like, I'm looking to get insurance on a scooter, and they thought I was talking about like a Vespa, and they were like, yeah 1 second, and we transfer you over to the motorbike department. I was like, no, it's not a motorbike. It's like a child's toy, but a little bit bigger with an electric motor. And she just laughed at me. Like, it's like, why would you want to insure one of these things? Like, because the problem is, a lot of people like Shane Ross are thinking these things are closer to cars and motorbikes than they are cyclists, but they're not. They are so much closer to bikes.
They're probably closer to a pedestrian than they are even to a bicycle.
I'd say they're closer to pedestrian than they are cars anyway, for sure.
And is there any countries, Mert, that are like good examples to look at in which they've brought in legislation and it's working absolutely fine? It's causing no trouble. Is this, or have these only come into Ireland in the past year and a half or so, or is it kind of a global thing where these have just taken off?
Sure. Have you not seen the episode of South Park there in the last season where it was just everywhere they turned. There was just more scooters.
Yeah, no, actually,
I haven't watched South Park in about
this
5
this
years
is
or so.
another important point to make. And actually, I've got an interesting opinion on this myself. So there's two kinds of scooter. Like there's the same scooter, so it's the same device, but there's a privately owned scooter or a public share scooter. So like public share is like Dublin bikes but with scooters. So obviously Uber has one called Bird, Lyft are involved. There's a couple of different companies that do this.
Yeah.
And that works well in certain countries and stuff. Like in the US, they've had some problems because they just come in, drop a load of scooters, and they don't really work with local authorities. I'm actually very against a scooter share system coming into Dublin because I just don't think our footpaths are big enough for it.
I think Dublin probably is a bad idea, but I think Limerick would be very well situated to that, because just to take into consideration here, where I live, the bus route, the 304, is notoriously shit.
Yeah.
And we're not connected up with the rent-a-bike schemes up this far, even though we're about 10-minute walk away from the Crescent. And obviously, unlike Dublin, there is no Lewis. There's no like train into the city centre for areas like Corbally, Castletroy, Raheen, and those kind of surrounding zones.
Yeah,
They'd be great for getting in and out of the city for cheap, safely, and environmentally friendly.
Yeah, and there has been examples of like big US states where these big massive expanses of land like in the cities where you'd have to walk an hour to get from one side to the other, and there's no public transport, and scooters are perfect for that. In Dublin, I think private ownership works fantastically well. If you want to have a scooter, go buy one. They should be available on Bike to Work, all this kind of stuff. Like they should absolutely be encouraged. I do have massive hesitations around these scooter share systems for Dublin. I just don't think there's the space for it. Like you said, the likes of Galway, Kilkenny, Dublin, Cork, these places, they might work perfectly well because they've just got that little bit more space. But Dublin's streets are so narrow and crappy, and I don't know. I think as well as that, scooters have a really small learning curve, but there's some little intricacies that you need to like be using these things on a regular basis. So I don't want just any old person jumping up on them, because then scooters in general get a bad name. I'm quite protective of scooters in Dublin, as you might have sensed. So I think
yeah, they're kind of like you're becoming the father of the scooter.
yeah, but like if you've bought a scooter, you're going to be more responsible with it. You're not going to leave it out in the street lying around. Whereas if you have a scooter share system, you probably will just leave it lying around, so they get a bad name that way.
And they're not protected as much and maintained as well.
Yeah. So no, like the UK, in terms of other countries, like they are popular in Europe. In France, they're very popular. In Germany, they're popular. They're bringing in different laws about, like in Germany, I think it's either Germany or France. You can actually drive these things in pedestrian areas, but you can't go faster than 6 kilometers an hour. And you can drive on normal roads or cycle lanes for I think up to 20 kilometers an hour or something like that. So they're just adjusting to the laws for these things, and that's what you have to do. Like the default position of something new shouldn't be illegal and demonize it. It should be, why are people enjoying this? Why are people using it? Why is it popular? And is it something that we should really be encouraging? Because like I think the nation of Ireland right now has shown people that we want to be more environmentally conscious. We want to be more environmentally friendly, and here we are demonizing a really great way to get around Dublin City.
That's actually a very interesting point. Obviously, the local elections just wrapped up, and the Greens made a huge bit of ground, and obviously a lot of that has to do with people's concerns about how we're dealing with the environment here. So the fact that you're demonizing something that's supposed to be a green form of travel is kind of counterintuitive.
It could also be a case that, like, realistically, the government aren't going to make any money off of these scooters. Like, from the loose line and that, they're making money from that. From cars, they obviously make a ball of money, even though they're trying to not get rid of cars.
I'm expecting to say the Rothschilds any second now.
Huh?
I'm expecting you to bring up any of these old conspiracies. The government aren't getting money.
Like you could
like
activate conspiracy theory mode here now for me, to be honest. But yeah, I think you're onto something.
Go on. Are we going down that route?
Well, yeah, I think it's a very fair point to make that governments.
I mean, like you said, if it costs you 8 cents a day to charge it, it costs me a lot more to put 20 quid a week into my car. And
so you're
pay
saying
my
the
car
tax gains?
And, yeah, the taxing again. So like that's why they're saying that could be a reason why they're turning to getting insurance and tax.
Yeah,
because they're looking at people using these and they're like, we already have enough cyclists. We can't really make any money off the cyclists, so how can we make money off of an e-scooter? Oh, it's got a little mini engine on it. Let's say that has to be taxed now.
Yeah, exactly.
Hello and welcome back to Those Conspiracy Guys, the Goosed edition.
Well, like, I think that is to a certain extent what's happening here. Like, you know, there's all of a sudden, because look at it this way, politicians are cute enough to know when stuff like this is happening. Like, you know, like Green Party aside, just 2 or 3 days before the vote, Fianna Fáil came out with a bill in the Dáil about electric scooters. You know, it's Noel Rock has been talking about this for a year and a half now. He actually uses a scooter, so I believe he used to until they became so grey area and kind of forbidden. But like he knows that like there's a community of people out there who want to use these things and that they are good. So probably to a lesser extent Noel Rock, but Fianna Fáil tried to cash in on this last week or the week before the elections just by.
But even if we're talking about that tax bullshit, most people who have a scooter probably have a car. As you said, that's 67%, so they're still paying tax and insurance on these things. It's not like they're just sitting there.
Yeah,
Are you
exactly.
Are you going to tax a pair of rollerblades next?
Yeah,
You're wearing Heelys.
And for me, it comes back to the basics of like these things are so similar to bicycles. I just don't understand why anybody would have a problem with them. It's just they're new and different. That's the only thing I can see that is different.
Has there been any reported accidents or injuries that they're basing their concerns off of?
No.
Or are they just...
No.
I wouldn't also be taking the politicians too, busily on that because, you know, the whole swing thing. If they can't use a swing, I wouldn't exactly fancy them on a scooter. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, very true. There'll be bogey claims going left, right, and centre.
I broke my ankle.
No, like I don't think there has been any really big examples of like obviously if you go worldwide, yeah, there's the odd accident, but it's like Tesla, for example. You know, it's the auto drive system. As soon as somebody got killed with the auto drive system, as tragic as it was, you have to think about it in terms of how many miles and kilometers that car has gone through without any accidents versus how many miles and kilometers it would take a human to have an accident. Like, it's not the technology that's always the problem. It's the people who are reporting the technology. Like, you know, it's putting the negative spin on it.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's happening with scooters as well. I think that there's a lot of negative spins been put on it. And the thing is, from what I've seen, it feels like there's a bit of cop on starting to happen. Like, so the Garda seizures, for example, that was happening pretty full on. There was a couple of days there where there was 5-6 scooters being lifted every day. Now, the most ridiculous point of this that I have to highlight is that these scooters were taken away on tow trucks. That is just absolute lunacy. Like, you could throw these things in the boot of a car and they were actually going away on tow trucks. But so these confiscations were happening. There was the grey area. It was starting to get into the media more and more. And then there was like a week or two where RT Primetime covered it. The Journal were talking about it. We were talking about it. Who else was talking about it? It was on all these big... The Irish Times was talking about it. All these big outlets were talking about e-scooters. And what started happening was, you could see on Twitter, social media, there was about 97% of everything was positive towards scooters. It was like, why is this a news story? Why is it an issue? And then this kept on going and going and going. And basically there wasn't a week going by where there wasn't a news article saying electric scooters are great or something along those lines. And what happened now is that, like, we've had the Minister of Transport, Shane Ross, come out in the Dáil and probably make his biggest stance as to why these things are MPVs and why they're not road legal or road worthy and all this kind of stuff. But with the clearest that we've come to this day in the Dáil of people saying you shouldn't be using them, Gardaí have stopped seizing them. So it's really hard to understand, kind of like every day, I won't lie, I'm driving my scooter and I don't know whether I'm going to be stopped, if I'm not going to be stopped, if I'm legal, if I'm illegal. I have no idea. I know I'm getting to work with a smile on my face. People always tell me that when they see me drive by, I look absolutely delighted with life. It's because,
to be honest with you, when I was up with you at the Dublin Tech Summit, you gave me a spin and it was so much fun.
Yeah, they're great crack.
They really are.
And what model do you have, Mert? Do you have the Xiaomi one?
Yeah, the Xiaomi M365. So I got mine in 3. It was about, I think it was 450 quid.
Yeah, something like that. Because you had the Segway 9-bot and the Kugo S1, and that was the first scooter confiscated.
Yeah, now I
Kugo
think
S1.
that scooter could be slightly different though, because there are some electric scooters that don't need that kick to start, which means that they're not they're not assisted. They actually might be mechanically propelled. But the Xiaomi M365 does need that kick to start, so I'm not entirely sure how they're classifying them as MPVs.
Yeah, no, I would definitely like to give it a try. But yeah, like I said, I haven't seen any of them really around Limerick. I think if I did see them around Limerick, the guards wouldn't even give them a second look, because this is more of a priority for guards above in Dublin more than anywhere else in the country, because the rest of the country aren't using them, so it's probably not even a priority for them. Why it's a priority for any guard, I don't know why.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully when the next general election comes around, this will be a big talking point. And
Well, we'll go back to your
hopefully they can-
tax collector issue. Do you know if your scooter gets impounded or taken off you by the guard? You know the cost is the exact same as getting your car back, 125 quid.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That's a joke, like. Yeah, ridiculous. And sure,
So-
how much money is?
So why is it a priority? Quotas.
And sure, how much money are they spending to actually get them picked up in the first place?
Yeah, well,
Exactly.
tow trucks ain't free, so.
Yeah.
Girls.
So
So there I am. We are paying
the Limerick
taxes.
coming out of me there, talking about the law. Girls.
so in the next 6 to 12, in the next general election, can you see this being a big talking point, Mert?
To be honest, I don't think so, because like once this RSA report comes out that we've heard so much about for the last 2-3 months, like this will be the point where we actually there's a line drawn in the sand. What worries me is the language that Shane Ross used in the last time he talked about this, where it was like he needs to be convinced they're safe and all this kind of stuff. Like I'm not convinced at all that Shane Ross is on the side of beating congestion, keeping people off Dublin bus and keeping people away from Dublin bikes.
Not bad for the Minister of Transport, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's very, very worrying, the language that he used the last day. Now the only thing that I can hope is that because of this green wave that happened in the elections, is that there's a little bit more pressure on the Fine Gael government to kind of push down towards. Now obviously Shane Ross is independent, but for Leo Varadkar, I'd like to think that he's having a little word with him, being if we come down heavy on scooters, that's going to be an awful own goal in terms of green environmental kind of sentiments.
Well, that's it. The people have spoken in terms of they want greener solutions. So, if Radker is to let Shane Ross continue demonising them and banning them, most people who've been voting would be like, actually,
yeah,
no.
So to answer your question, I think this is probably all going to be boxed off well before the next time we have a general election. But to be honest with you, I'm not 100% confident that Shane Ross is going to do the logical thing here, and like there needs to be legislation. Most people I've been talking to about scooters, if they've got certain powers and stuff like that, they're happy to pay a tax or whatever.
Yeah.
But like if you've got one like the Xiaomi M365, like it's no faster than a bike. It's no more powerful than a bike. It does about the same range. Well, it does way more range than I could do on a bike, but that's down to my health more than anything else. But like I can't see how this is going to end. Like it's completely unpredictable. It's a cliffhanger. But like
Okay, well, I've got 2 questions before we wrap it up. So the first one obviously kind of has to do with the insurance, and it has to do with the security, because obviously if we're saying privately owned scooters, they're 500 quid a pop, and when you go to work, where'd you leave it, and how do you know it's going to be safe?
yeah, so they are tough to lock. So I have 2 locks that I use. So one is just a normal U-bar lock to use for a bike. So you can wrap that around a normal place. And then like a normal bike stand. And then I also have a longer one, a kind of a coil lock. And I use that through the back wheel if I'm parking out in the street or something like that. It's just to give me an extra bit of security that it's locked in 2 different ways. Like it does have a software lock on it. So in the app, you just swipe right and it basically locks the scooter down, and it starts beeping and the motor won't work without you swiping again. But I'm pretty sure doing a reset wouldn't be too hard on that. So I'd definitely be looking at getting yourself some good locks.
Fair. And could that be where the insurance conversation is coming from? The fear of theft, if there's a big uptake on them?
No, I think the insurance thing is definitely down to accidents. That's all they're worried about. They're worried about if a driver hits a scooter rider on the roads. They're worried about if a scooter rider knocks down a cyclist. like to be honest with you, it made me think about it. I was like, what happens if a cyclist hits a pedestrian? Like, I don't understand what the liability is there, because like that's the same liability that I have on a scooter, is that it's an electric scooter. Even though
That's fair.
until
Yeah, that's fair.
until the law is clarified, my fear is that I'd be done as if because if it's classed as an MPV, technically a judge could tell me that this is the equivalent of you driving a Land Rover up a bike lane and knocking down a pedestrian, and I could be charged the exact same way as that. Like that to me puts this whole thing into context of how ridiculous this is.
Yeah.
It actually does, yeah. Okay, my last question before we wrap this up is, because obviously you're the scooter guy, if somebody's going to get a scooter, what are the 3 top things they should know or do?
All right, that's a good question.
And we'll leave it on that then.
So I think the most important thing is to definitely just go for it for a start. Like, don't be intimidated, because like the learning curve on these things, if you think it's like, oh god, it's something I wouldn't be able to do, like you saw yourself, John, without even thinking about it, you're up and running and using it and having the crack. Like it's a great way to get around. And the learning curve is tiny. Like if you've never ridden a bike, you'd be able to use a scooter. So that's definitely the first thing. The second thing is just to be aware of riding a scooter. Like once it does take a little bit of getting used to, you have to be very conscious of bumps in the road and stuff, because you do have smaller wheels. But like I've actually gotten quite used to it now. That after clocking up about 500 kilometers, like I'm able to ride. Like if I get an itchy face or a nose need to scratch or something like that, I can ride one handed and stuff like that. Like you do get quite comfortable with it, but just to be conscious that your first couple of times, take it slow, take it handy, drop it back into eco mode. Means you can't go as fast, and it just gives you that little bit more control over it while you're learning. Because like just when you're out on the road, you just need to be a little more conscious. And then I guess third thing is, it's when you're buying a scooter, it's funny. Like, we buy products these days and we think, oh, we've got warranties and all this kind of stuff. But like if you were to buy a bicycle and you got a puncture, you wouldn't think you get that fixed under warranty. So you have to there is a strange kind of mentality you have to understand here, where you're not buying a gadget, you're buying a bike. Like, there's going to be things that you have to do to maintain it. There's going to be things you have to do to fix it. Like I had mine and I immediately got a puncture. So there's stuff you can buy called slime. It's fantastic stuff. You just squirt it into the tube, and it's this green goo with little rubber pellets in it. And if you get a little puncture, it rushes to the gap and clogs it straight away, so it stops all your punctures. But little things like that, like you're gonna have to be, if you have a scooter, you're gonna probably have to be willing to either get your hands dirty, or have somebody that will get your hands dirty. It's like buying a vintage car, it's gonna be a doer upper for a long time. But yeah, I think that's probably like the only other thing, I guess, a really important point is that because there is different scooters out there, is to make sure you're getting one that has that kick to start. Because if you get pulled over by the guards, that's the one thing that might get you off the hook. Whereas if it's a big beast of a yoke that's able to do 60 kilometers an hour and has a turn key on it and all this kind of stuff, and like that's effectively a motorbike. And even if you've got one of these, the scooter like I have, I've seen people put seats on them and stuff like that. To be honest, if you're putting a seat on it, I think you're opening yourself up to a little bit of attention from the Gardaí as well, because they're starting to look more like a Vespa and stuff like that, so, or a moped.
You look like a, yeah.
Yeah. So
you don't even need to send it. Go on.
And just lastly there, Mert, because obviously there's so much uncertainty about whether you'll actually be able to use these in the future. If someone were to listen to the podcast and they were thinking of getting one, but they weren't unsure, if they were unsure if they could use it in 6 months' time, what side of the fence would you be leaning on? Would you say go ahead and buy one, or would you say give it a few months, wait until the general election comes around or whatever, or wait until there's more legislation brought in place?
Yeah, if you're on the fence, I'd say wait until this RSA report comes out. It's just because, like, put it this way: if I didn't buy my scooter back in January, would I have bought one yesterday? Probably not. Because the RSA report, it's nearly here apparently. In political terms, it'll be here in the coming weeks, which could be months for all we know. But if you're on the fence and you're not sure and you're hesitant, just give it another couple of weeks, and hopefully this report will be out and we'll know where we stand then.
And if you are off the fence, buy the backpack with the indicators.
Exactly, everybody needs a backpack with indicators. It's like,
even if you're walking, you should have one of those.
Yeah, I can still use that walking to work.
I wouldn't, but okay.
Like, if somebody's chasing me down or something, that I can press left and then go right.
Actually, I'm going to use that as the last question, 100% last question, and we're signing off on this. On the backpack situation, if you're going to buy a scooter and you've made the decision you're buying a scooter, what is the first main like gadget that you would have to buy to have with it?
A helmet.
Well,
So like a lot of people,
Gadget.
a lot of people don't buy helmets. Like I've seen a lot of people on these scooters, and they don't wear high vis or they don't wear helmets and they don't have lights. And like you have to remember, the scooter I have, it's black. So like there's people riding around at night dressed head to toe in black, on a black scooter, and they don't turn the lights on. It's ridiculous. So the first thing I'd buy is a helmet. Get yourself a high vis vest. The indicator backpack, I will admit, is an absolute game changer for me. It makes it so much safer to get around. Plus, you do get a lot of conversations with people that's at red lights when they ask you about them. Get some extra lights as well. So like I've got a light on the scooter itself, but I have an extra light pointing down to the ground. And it's great just to kind of light up when it's dark, just if there's any potholes around that I can see them. Like cyclists do the same thing. Get yourself an extra little brake light for the back just to give yourself some more light. There's if you want to use your phone more, like because obviously there's no display on the M365, so I've got a thing called a quad lock, so it actually Deliveroo drivers love these things, so it clicks in, it goes on the back of your phone, and it just you can click your phone onto the handlebars and just put it down at a 45-degree angle and turn it, and it locks in, so you can actually see your screen, and there's an app then that connects to the scooter and shows your speed and all this kind of stuff. So there's
Nice.
that's another thing. It's kind of the same as what I said about when you buy a scooter, you're buying it to use and to fix up and to do work on. You're also going to buy gadgets
It's a project.
for it. Yeah, it's a project. Like I've seen some guys adding crazy amount of lights to theirs and doing different things to them. So like just be aware that
22s on it.
yeah, dropping it, putting rims on it, that kind of stuff. Yeah, but
Exactly.
yeah, like just be aware that you probably will end up buying a few extra bits and pieces for it. Like there's little customizations you can get in 3D printed bits and pieces. So, yeah, they're a project. But the funny thing is, I think that it's like the maker movement. They were enthusiast devices up until probably this year. What astonishes me is like I work on the keys. I've got I'm not on the keys up around Sir John Rogerson's key, and I've got a window seat in my workplace. Like so, I'm able to look out into the bike lanes. It astonishes me the demographics of people that use these scooters. It's not just men, it's not just women, it's not just old people, it's not just young people. Anybody can use these things, and everybody seems to love using them. And I think it's just because they're such a practical way to get around.
And the
Cool.
crack is the best way to sign that off. Dean, do you want to sign us off and be done
Yeah,
with it?
so to conclude, e-scooters, cool.
Government bed.
Ross, chill out. And make sure to check out Mert's article on e-scooters if you feel you need any more information
And where can they find that, Dean?
on Goosed.ie.
All right. We call it a day. Good luck to both of you. See you in a while.
Cheers, Mert.
See you lads. Cheers.
Bye-bye.